Studying psychology and counseling has made it clear just how complicated we are as humans. Hi, I'm Lacey. I work as a mental health counselor, and I've always been fascinated with why we do what we do. Today, I want to talk about how we upset ourselves sometimes. So, the first way is by choosing not to communicate in the hope that other people will be able to read our mind. The second way is called a double bind, which is sending two conflicting messages to someone. My goal here is just to create awareness and not to shame, because we all do this. So, to illustrate the first one, choosing not to communicate, I'll share a story about Mark and Mindy. So, Mark and Mindy have been in a relationship for a while, and it's a pretty healthy relationship. But sometimes Mindy will get mad at Mark, and Mark feels a little caught off guard. One day, Mindy decides in her head that she wants Mark to start doing the dishes, but she refuses to tell him that. Instead, she chooses to leave the dishes in the sink, hoping that if he sees the dishes, he will just know that he's supposed to do them. Well, the dishes stayed in the sink through the afternoon and into the evening, and Mindy felt annoyed. The next morning, still feeling a little annoyed, but wanting to stick to her guns and give Mark another chance, she poured herself a cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table to see if he could pick up what she was putting down. As she sat and drank her coffee, she watched Mark walk by the sink once and then walk by the sink another time, totally ignoring the dishes. As she watched him, her anger increased to the point where she was fuming. Finally, she couldn't take it, and she said, "Mark, why have you not done the dishes yet? I have been wanting you to do the dishes." Mark, appearing like a deer in headlights, said, "Huh? What?" To which Mindy replied, "I have been wanting you to do the dishes since last night. You see them there in the sink. Why have you not done them?" With a very confused look, Mark said, "I didn't know you wanted me to do the dishes. You never asked." As you can see, Mindy made a decision about what it was that she was wanting, but she chose not to communicate that to Mark, thinking maybe he could read her mind. The simple solution, or so it seems, is for Mindy to just ask Mark, "Hey Mark, can you do the dishes tonight?" But sometimes, even though a solution seems simple, it's not always easy, and sometimes can take a little bit more effort and feel a little bit uncomfortable. Mindy learned from the interaction that it wasn't that Mark did not want to do the dishes or wasn't doing them despite her. He was not aware of what she was wanting. Something that seemed so clear to Mindy was not clear to Mark. Mindy didn't really want to ask Mark to do the dishes, but she realized that if she didn't, she was running the risk of upsetting herself even more. And over time, because Mark knew what she wanted, he eventually started to do the dishes without being asked. We want people to be able to read our minds sometimes, because that would be easier. To verbalize to someone what we're wanting, thinking, and feeling does take a little bit more effort and can feel a little bit uncomfortable. But if we continue to make decisions in our head and not let anyone in on it, then we run the risk of making ourselves upset. Being able to be upfront and clear and communicate what we're wanting, thinking, and feeling has way more benefits than not communicating. So the second example is called the double bind. And this is when we send messages that we both want and don't want something, which usually leaves the other person confused and stuck as to what to do because they're fearful of making the wrong choice. So we will use Mark and Mindy again. Mindy wants Mark to help her more. and she has made it known to him that she would like more help. But Mindy is a hard worker and she likes to be busy. She likes to complete tasks. It helps her to feel better when things get done. She complains to Mark, saying, I need more help. I need you to help me more. But then she resumes her usual task completion and getting everything done. She is saying one thing and doing another. Her behavior makes it hard for Mark to figure out what exactly she needs help with because it seems like she has it all covered. A few days later, Mindy's complaining again about needing more help. But again, she takes up all the tasks and completes everything. The truth is that deep down, Mindy is afraid to let Mark help her. She's afraid to relinquish tasks for fear that maybe he will not complete them or complete them the way she would or in the time that she would. And she feels a sense of relief when she is able to complete the tasks in the way that she wants. But Mindy often finds herself upset because Mark is not helping. She's not quite able to recognize that she's sending Mark two conflicting messages at the same time. She is saying to him she both wants and doesn't want help. So, what is Mark to do? Because he does not want to upset her, but feels stuck. The solution here seems simple too. If Mindy would let go of some of the tasks she completes regularly, Mark can step up and help her. But even though that solution sounds simple, again, for Mindy, that might not be easy. If Mindy can recognize that she's sending mixed messages to Mark, she can then really figure out what tasks in her routine she's willing to give up. And if she's not willing to give up anything, then she can let Mark off the hook because truly she does not want help. If she chooses to give up some of the tasks, she will probably feel uncomfortable at first, but it would be the only way for Mark to step in and start to help. Mindy decided to choose to let Mark help her and to relinquish some of the tasks she does. She felt reluctant and a little fearful, but she decided what tasks she was willing to give up and talked to Mark about it. Mark agreed and began to help. Mindy noticed that it was uncomfortable at first, but over time it got easier and she began to feel relief that someone was able to pick up some of the slack. With the first example, Mindy chose not to communicate. Mark did not receive a message because the message was never sent. With the double bind, two conflicting messages were sent. This causes the other person to feel confused and not quite sure what action to take for fear that they may choose wrong. So, as you can see with both of these examples, we are making choices that kind of contribute to our upset. But if we can recognize what we're doing, then we have a greater chance of making a different choice. With both examples, we are the ones that are putting the other person in a position where they can't or don't know how to respond. We are then left feeling frustrated and upset and even blame the other person for that. But if we can become more aware of the messages we're sending to people or not sending, we can then start to send better messages, clearer messages. It will help us to not be as upset and it will relieve any confusion on the other person's part. Of course, there's always the option to stay the same because ultimately it's always up to you. Thank you so much for watching.